Please welcome Dr. Heather Trim.
Great, thanks. Thank you all for sticking around. I know it's been a very long day. And reminder that we do have some really great door prizes. So if you stick around after the panel discussion, which will be a lively opportunity for you to ask pointed questions, then we'll do the door prize. So, oh, good. So just a quick thing about Zero Waste Washington. So we are a statewide nonprofit, and our goal is to make trash obsolete in Washington, and we do it primarily by trying to pass laws at the state level, but also the city and county level. We are doing some pilot projects in some communities, and we do some research projects. In fact, we're doing research on phthalates, which Dr. Hunt just left. She mentioned that it's a plasticizer that's an endocrine disruptor. We have 7 program areas. And I'm really going to be focusing on plastics today, but you can see we have things ranging from producer responsibility. Our organization, before I joined, passed the e-waste bill for the state, so you can take your leftover computer to Goodwill, and it's paid for to be recycled in Washington, not Southeast Asia, by the computer companies. Last year, not this session, but last legislative session, we paid for the lobbyist who helped make the medicine return bill happen, but it was a 10-year effort and a lot of people. So you can take your leftover medicine to the, not us, everybody, you all are part of it. You can take your leftover medicine to the pharmacy, the hospital, or the sheriff's office. It will be paid for by the pharmaceutical industry. It was the first in the nation. We now have one in California and in New York. And 7 years ago, when I was a partner organization working on it, they had 44 paid lobbyists trying to make sure it didn't happen. So that's why it took 10 years. And I hate to say it, the reason it passed was because of the opioid crisis. Recycling, which we're not going to talk about too much today, repair, reuse, tool libraries, sharing events, excess packaging, Amazon, innovation, and then plastic pollution and toxics. So I'm going to really quickly talk about big picture plastic, because you've heard this already. This is a part of my longer talk that I normally give, and some of you in the audience, I'm afraid, have already heard some of this. A little bit about the local impacts and then solutions, primarily. So this is a really good takeaway for you to take to your friends who say, why do you care about this issue? This is the United Nations stats. This is what they're using. That by 2025, which as you know is right around the corner, we're going to have 1 pound of plastic for every 3 pounds of fish biomass in our oceans. This is not a trivial thing. This is a major problem, and we are now eating that plastic. We don't know the human health impact of it, but you can tell from Dr. Hunt's presentation, it ain't good. So, as was mentioned before, the plastics break down physically, but they don't break down chemically. They don't go back to carbon and nitrogen and hydrogen when they get out into the marine waters. This is the guy at the Algal Eater Marine Research Foundation, Charlie Moore, who I knew in Los Angeles 30 years ago, who was being made fun of because he was working on this issue. And he turned out to be right. He's the one that discovered all the plastics in the North Pacific. This is the North Pacific. These are gyres. We see all those yellow dots. The globe has 11 gyres in it. A gyre is like a huge vortex or an eddy, or like your toilet. It's the water that goes in a circle. 5 of these are large. The one in the North Pacific, north of Hawaii, is where the first plastics were found. But now they're finding plastics, as was mentioned by Dr. Ross, in the entire ocean, all the way down into the Marianas Trench, the deepest part of the ocean next to Japan. And this is what the sample looks like. And I actually have my bag of tricks here. So I will circulate. This is a sample from the North Pacific Gyre from 2009. And you'll see the big pieces of plastic and the little pieces of plastic. They pull a net and they pick up the bits of plastic. It's not like a mass of plastic. So the outcome of all this in terms of wildlife, and there's a ton of research going on right now, is that microplastics are being found everywhere. At least 600 species have documented plastics in them, and including humans. There was a study that they looked at human poop about 2 months ago, and 9 samples from across Europe, every single one had plastics in it. And then, of course, we're concerned about the toxic chemicals in the plastics since they're made out of petroleum. They're made out of toxic chemicals. So When you have plastic bags in the marine environment, they become buoyantly neutral at first. They're just sort of floating up and down, and they look a lot like a jellyfish. And unfortunately, jellyfish are the favorite food of every single sea turtle species except for one. And that's the problem. So this is our iconic image of why plastic bags are a problem in the marine environment, because they think that they are jellyfish, and they get in their belly and they displace their ability to eat food. Now, this was last summer. This was June of 2018. A baby pilot whale came up on the shore in Thailand. It threw up 5 bags before it died, then it died. They cut open its stomach, and they found, I think 80 plastic bags in its stomach. It was 17 pounds, I think. Anyway, it was so much that it was definitely not able to eat. It displaced its ability to get nutritious food. These are counting all the bags. Now, we don't have sea turtles that much. We have some in the Salish Sea, and we don't have pilot whales, but what we do have are gray whales. So this is a gray whale that died in Alki in Seattle in 2010. And when they cut open its stomach, they found 20 plastic bags. They found other things like duct tape. And the problem is for a gray whale is the way it eats is like this. And it goes along the bottom of the water, between the water and the mud, and it scoops everything into its mouth. So it may not have died from the plastic bags, but this is definitely what it was eating towards the end of its life, potentially in Salish Sea. So when people say, where all those plastic bag goes? Well, the plastic bags kind of make their way down to the bottom of the water column, apparently. So in addition to impacts on wildlife, plastics is a huge problem in a lot of other ways. And by that I mean single-use disposable plastics. Plastics like your glasses or your tables and chairs. I'm talking about the single-use plastics. One is just the simple impact of litter in our communities. I've lived here in the region for 20 years, and I can tell you that it has definitely gotten worse. When you're driving on I-5 and you get off at a stop sign and you look to your right and you look to your left, you see a ton of litter. And if you guys try that, you'll see it too. And then once you see it, you can't not see it after that, and that's a real problem. And I think it's for 2 reasons. One is our population has grown, and the other is that our materials have changed so much. We went from having baby food in glass jars to now squeezable tubes where you squeeze the pouch, the food into your child's mouth. Or coffee that went from tins to pouches. And those pouches, by the way, are not recyclable. They're made of multiple layers that cannot be recycled at this point. The other impact of plastics is on our commercial compost facilities. So this is what happens. See the shed at the top? All your yard waste and food waste goes in, gets chopped up a little bit. It goes into these windrows and sits for like 90 days and then gets turned. And it makes this luscious, luscious, high-quality compost. But the problem is that's that same pile at the bottom up close, and this is what you find a ton of in it. It is full of plastic. And this is a huge problem for a state that is an agricultural state. We need to have high-quality compost to replenish our soil in our state, but we cannot be spreading plastics all over our state, and that's what we're doing right now. And then there's the issue about our recycling facilities. So when you go to a recycling facility, and we do a tour once a year if you want to come on the tour, it's very, very interesting. They have conveyor belts and opticals and all sorts of ways of sorting all the plastic. Unfortunately, though, part of the system is what's called the waterfall. And there are these big metal rollers, and they want everything that's like paper to go across the top and everything else to fall through. This is that point in the facility. And the plastic bags and film wrap around the rollers so much that every 8 hours they have to stop the entire facility and take drills and knives and equipment to cut the bags and film off of the rollers. And it's like concrete. It's so hard on there. It's really hard work. It's dangerous for the workers. And then before they even get to the shutdown point, the efficiency of things being able to fall through has been greatly diminished because there's no room for things to fall through when you get it all wrapped around. This is a huge problem in our recycling facilities. That's why the recycling facilities do not want plastic bags and film. And you're going to start hearing more and more of that in your recycling messaging from your cities and your suppliers. And then finally, there's just the issue that we are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to recover salmon so that we can recover our orca. And what's happening is we are now getting all those green things we're putting in, the ditches and all the green stuff we're doing, green infrastructure, clogged with plastic. And it's costing a ton of money to do that. So they're not working to help do something we're trying to fix in terms of salmon. Okay, so let's move over to legislation. So looking around the globe, this is plastic bag and styrofoam legislation around the entire world. Where it's colored, they've done something. Where it's gray, they don't have national legislation. You will see the United States is gray. And the reasons why they've passed plastic bag legislation in many countries has to do with a lot of different things. So for example, in the Arab Emirates, it's because the camels were dying from eating plastic bags, getting in their stomachs. In Bangladesh, they had massive flooding caused by the bags clogging their system and causing a whole lot of damage and death. And in certain countries in Africa, there's a joke that the plastic bag is the national flower of that country. And the reason is because when you look out and you look at the shrubs and trees as you're driving along, you see these white things and they look like flowers. They've just blown across the landscape. So all these countries have taken action, but not us. Now, in the United States, the purple are where there's been some partial action, cities and counties, and the green is the one state that has actually passed a bag law, and that's California. New York is in the works on passing one, which is not a good law, by the way. If you want to ask me that question later, it's not a good law. Hawaii, all 5 counties have it, so it's essentially, and all of our territories have bag legislation, but not the other states. So in Washington, we have been working to help local community members do local bag ordinances. And in our audience is Carol Sullivan, where are you? Who did La Conner last year, yay. Is there anyone else in here who's worked on bag ordinances with us? So we're helping support local ordinances to do this work. And so there are 28 that passed, some just now in 2019. And this helped us get to a tipping point where we could do a state bill. The bill actually died not last week, it died 2 days ago in the legislative session. So we really worked hard. A lot of you may have helped with it. It did not happen, and the reason it didn't happen is because we didn't have the leadership support to get it to a floor vote. We actually had the votes last Wednesday in the House, and they didn't let it come forward. This is what happens to a variety of bills. So it was very, very disappointing, and we definitely going to bring it back next year, and so we'll have to do local ordinances in the meantime. In the meantime. What the bill would do is similar to the one in Bellingham, but a little different. It would ban the thin plastic, these are called t-shirt bags, because these look like t-shirts. For those of you who are confused, this is why they're called t-shirt bags. Okay, they look like t-shirt bags. Because I didn't know what a t-shirt bag was. So it would put, in the end, the version that almost passed, should have passed last Wednesday, had an 8-cent pass-through charge on paper bags and a thicker 2.25 mil thick bag, a thick, durable bag you could bring again and again. And the store would keep the 8 cents. The critical thing here, and the big fight, was about that 8 cents. The grocers are having to pay, the independent grocers are having to pay between 10.5 and 12.5 cents for paper bags. The cost of paper bags has skyrocketed in the last 10 years. So in order to make it not a burden on our small mom and pop shops and on our independent grocers, we really needed a 10-cent charge, which we got down to 8 cents. They agreed to that because we went to a thinner bag. And so instead of a 3 mil, we went to a 2.25 mil bag, which was 2 cents differential. It is incredibly important if we pass local ordinances between now and next year that they include this charge. If not, we should abandon the effort in that city. I just want to make sure that you guys know that because that was a really, really big problem. Pulp and paper fought this thing like crazy. They got the most expensive lobbyist in Washington to fight it. He's good, by the way. And they also dipped into a national fund to pay for extra lobby capacity to fight this bill in Washington, because it was one thing to pass it in California, but once it starts passing in a state like Washington, they're worried it's going to sweep the country. And like I said, the New York bill is not that great, and that's because it doesn't have a fee. It says we ban plastic bags, and then you can have paper bags, no charge, for free. And it's just going to mean everybody's going to shift from plastic to paper. It's not going to incentivize people to bring their own bag, which is the goal. And it also won't reimburse the stores. Oh dear, I'm going to speed up. The charge was exempt for people who are on food assistance programs, And it did not involve all these different types of bags. And that's because the early low-hanging fruit is the carry-home bag, and then eventually we might get to these, but we're not there yet politically. And this thing isn't going. A critical thing is that green and brown tinted bags are what the Seattle ordinance has and the most recent ordinance has is that if you have a green bag, if you have a compostable bag, it must be green or brown tinted. Otherwise, it can be pink, purple, whatever. And the reason is because it's so confusing. I'm going to pass these around. A compostable bag versus a not compostable bag is so confusing to the consumer because they look so similar. And it's like greenwashing to think that those are compostable, and it's caused a huge contamination problem in our system. So we are also working on local food serviceware ordinances. There are 8 in place, and Burien is working on one right now, and we would love to do one in Bellingham. So I hope that an outcome of today will be a committee of people from Bellingham who would like to work on one here, and maybe some of the other cities up here in Whatcom County. The one in Burien says that it would be no styrofoam, and everything would have to be compostable. Anything that you get at the fast food or whatever would be compostable only. That's what passed in Lake Forest Park, and that's what passed in Edmonds. And there was a bill related to straws on demand. It died because it was going to preempt local ordinances, and so we actually tried to basically say, well, it would have been okay, but it wouldn't have really solved the problem. So I just snuck this slide in. People asked, when is the hearing? So there's going to be a public comment period, and there's going to be public meetings on the bring your own new regulations in the Department of Health. Now, we don't know for sure it's going to be in there. We've given them language, we've talked about it, but hopefully it will. And it's going to be July 22nd in Ferndale, and then down in Renton on the 23rd. And a really, really, really great bill that we didn't get all the way, we got a study instead of the real bill, would be to do producer responsibility in Washington State for plastic packaging like they do in British Columbia. So if you go to British Columbia, the manufacturers are paying for the end of life of all their recyclables and packaging. Here it would just be plastic packaging. This is the gold standard. This would revamp our recycling system. This would be awesome, and you can imagine the opposition to this bill. So it would use the existing system, and it would shift the cost of recycling plastic packaging from the ratepayer to the manufacturer. And it would bring recycling to some parts of our state that don't even have recycling. This bill is 5397. It just got sent to the governor, yay, but it's a study bill, not the real deal. So we got it down to a study. We're going to collect data for the next 2 years, and we're going to bring it back in 2021. So this is a good thing. It's a step in the right direction. If we'd passed it, it would have been the first in the nation, and the industry opposed it like crazy. So plastic water bottles is a really big thing. We would love to address plastic water bottles big time. The problem we have is Flint, Michigan. Bottom line. People don't trust their tap water. And so until we get more trust, we need to do other things. So what we're working on is this thing called a refill thing. And we're going to do this for all of Washington. And we love another group of people, the same group of people who want to work on that up here, where businesses could opt in on an app, and you could go and get your water bottle filled for free. So it's like a refill concept that they have in the UK. We want to get schools and religious institutions and public institutions and parks to have refill stations. And like to do an app like this. Now, a bill that just passed that is awesome addresses what Mark talked about this morning. It would basically say that it would be illegal to have a product in Washington State that is biodegradable, eco, oxy, whatever, if it isn't actually compostable and meets the standard. It would have to be labeled compostable, it would have to meet the standard, and it would have to be green or brown tinted if it's a fork. So today's forks, this is today's fork that they had, it's white. How do you know if this is compostable? It would only be allowed to be green or brown tinted in Washington in about a year if it's compostable, and otherwise it would have to be white, pink, purple, whatever, if it's not. And that would help clear up that confusion. So that bill is on its way to the governor. Yay! It's a great bill. Another bill that's on its way to the governor is to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030. This is a major deal. It matches the Obama goal that they set. It matches some climate change goals. It's amazing how much of a climate impact food has. The amount of water that is used in the United States to make the food we don't eat is something like 25% of our water usage. I mean, it's shocking. It is shocking, the impact of food waste. So this bill would set up a goal for the state and then planning so that we won't have, we need to figure out how much infrastructure and how much money we need to give to the food rescue groups so they can keep the food cold and sanitary, safe, healthy, when they take it from a restaurant or grocer to an end client. Big problem right now in the state. This bill may pass tomorrow or may not. This is the consolation prize on the bag bill. So, which you're going, what do you mean by that? So our champion on the bag bill is very upset that his bag bill didn't pass. And this is his other bill, and this is a great bill, and it did actually have a hearing in the Senate yesterday. It may not pass, though, because at the end, things don't happen, so we hope it does. It would say that you could take your leftover paint from your garage or your storage room and get it recycled for free, and it's very easy to make latex paint into new paint. And then the oil-based paint would be either resold, reused, kind of given away, or go to a hazardous waste facility. This is a great, great bill, and there are 8 other ones in the United States, and I hope it passes, but you never know until midnight tomorrow night. And so in general, our goal is waste prevention, bag bill, things like that. Bring your own. That's the #1 goal. Then reuse, then recycling. We do not like recovery. Recovery is burning it for fuel. They call it waste to energy, which is a euphemism for incineration. We heartily oppose incineration. We would be considering, and maybe Mark's waving his head up and down, there is chemical recycling, and so that might be an okay thing, to take it back down to its basic things and make new resins. That might be okay. If it's energy, okay, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, incineration, when you hear the word recovery, just be aware that that's a buzzword for that. And this is the bag monster at Lobby Day with Joe Fitzgibbon, who's the chair of the House Environment Committee. He is one amazing guy. He is we have a very good legislator in this guy. He is so smart. He's like really young and really good. And then on the my right is Mona Das, who was a brand new senator from the Kent-Auburn area. She agreed to take on the bag bill her first day of office. She was a major champion, a major fighter for the bag bill. She is going to be one heck of a legislator. And so we're really proud of her and Joe and, of course, the bag monster. And I think we're ready for well, I can take a couple of questions, but we're going to have the panel. So I'll take a couple of questions and then we'll do the panel. Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, so the question is, China said no to the wastes of the world, and that happened about a year and a half ago, and it went into effect in December of 2017. Right now, our recycling facilities are still moving the material, quote unquote. They are able to find markets in India. They was going to Vietnam. Vietnam closed its doors. It was going to Thailand. They closed its doors. It's still going to India and Malaysia and South Korea. However, they're going to get to capacity as well. And they haven't gotten there yet, but they're going to. And they don't necessarily have, we're worried that they're incinerating and they have toxic dumping going on as well, because this is a huge load of stuff coming in. At the moment, it is still moving, quote unquote. But it is definitely, that's why we want to pass the packaging bill, because that would mean jobs in Washington, processing in Washington of our plastic packaging.
Hold on a second. Repeat that so that video picks up.
What are we also doing with just the plain stuff that we dump? Our
landfill.
Our landfill. Is that a never-ending thing, or is that?
So okay. So the question is, what's going on with our landfills in Washington?
Are they filling up?
They're filling up, but slowly. Landfills are kind of an interesting beast because we actually do have land for landfills, so it's tricky. But I forgot to say on the food waste bill, a really important thing, 17% by weight of what's going to the Washington state landfills is food. Not yard waste, not other organics, food. Half of that is edible, half of that is not edible. It's shocking. Are we done? Time up? So that then creates methane gas. And that's the third largest source of methane in the U.S. is from landfills. And methane is 20 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. So we need to stop sending things to the landfill, period, but especially we need to get food out of there.
Got time for one more?
One more? Okay, and then we'll talk in the panel.
We talk about the cascade curtain. I noticed one of the visuals showed local communities making efforts, and all of them were on the west side. Is the east side responding?
Yes. So there was one, Ellensburg. Ellensburg was on the east side, and we've been talking to people in Spokane. So it would have helped us to do the statewide bill if we'd had more on the east side. And there is more and more, Pullman, Spokane. We think we have opportunity over there. But if any of you all know people who might be interested in doing something at a local level, have them get in touch with us. We will help provide model ordinance support and tips, because sometimes it can really backfire if you get a bad ordinance. So we're here to help different local community groups. So we're going to do a panel, and I'll get on our other slide up.